about different things, different mechanisms of. We talked about machar, we talked about mudah and hudah as well. That's what we did last time. Hudah b'fnei shnayim tzarich lemaksuvu. Basically, it's a list given by Rava on Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman was the famous in terms of din choshen mishpat, and this is a list of things that are different things that a person can do, whether it's objecting to the chazaka, mudah, is informing that he was forced to sell something. Mudah is discussed in more detail in the Gemora at the end of the Omid. A person of mudah, as we said, is a person who makes a declaration that they were forced to do something, right? We're top of Mem Amud Aleph, yeah? They were forced to do something, and really, they was only under duress. And it makes that declaration beforehand, right? And we said that's and that's what we said that's why there's a need to sometimes do a process of bittul mudah. The person nullifies any mudah, because otherwise you're going to have a problem, and you could end up he's made some declaration to nullify it, which is a big problem. Hudah, which is the one we finished last time, is where a person admits to someone else in front of two people that he owes him money. So the Gemora says, if you're moda in front of two people, sorech lo maksuvu, yeah, you only need to do it in front of two people. You don't need three. It's not got a din of like a base din where you need three. It's enough in front of two people, but you have to tell them to write it down. That means the borrower has to tell them to write a shtar for the malveh as proof that whenever he wants to claim his debt, he can produce the shtar. But if he doesn't give permission, right, then the Eidim are not allowed to write it down. Why? Because maybe he doesn't want it to be written down. There's a big difference between an admission of a debt that's just an oral loan, bal peh, right? Than admission of than a debt that's written down. It's much more severe. A debt that's written down, okay, that he's got more capability of being able to he's got more weight, if you like, to claim against it. So, for example, the Rashbam explains that even if a person admits in front of Eidim that he owes money, he's believed to say Porati, I paid you off, because we hold someone who lends someone else money with Eidim, okay, he doesn't have to pay him back with Eidim. So as long as he says I paid you back, he's believed. But if the other guy has a shtar, if he produces a document, an IOU, yeah, then the borrower is not. It's not really an IOU. It's a signed shtar that he owes the money. Then the borrower is not believed to say Parati unless he brings Eidim that he actually paid off in front of them. Okay, and that's how it is. And that's what we said that. Yeah. And he can claim, etc., etc., and he's not believed to say parati. And how much more so, says the Rashbam, if you have a shtar sheyesh b'edim, he can definitely claim, and that's how it is. So, in other words, the principle is very simple. In a situation where it is considered a zchus for the person making this declaration or this statement or whatever, right? It's not going to be to his detriment. Then the edim can assume that he wants it written down, because it's going to benefit him, right? Like Hidah, not Hidah, like Mudah, right? This statement that I was being forced to do this, it's going to be in his own interest to write it down, and therefore it's okay. But in a situation where writing it down is to his detriment, the fact that he admitted that he owed money doesn't mean necessarily wants it written down in a shtar. Now, they can't do it unless they ask him, unless they get this explicit. He explicitly tells them to do so. Now, the next case is Kinyan. 3 lines down in Mem Amud Aleph. Kinyan b'fnei shnayim be'eino tzarich lo maksuvu. The next statement of Rav and Omer of Nachman was, the Kinyan has to take place in front of 2 people, and you do not need to say kasuvu. You don't need to say write it down. It's very interesting this, because we use Kinyanim all the time. And the Sugya Gemora, there's quite a few details of Kinyanim in the Sugya, which are very interesting. The Kinyan is, as Rashbam tells, look at the Rashbam, it's about 15 lines down. It's the second Rashbam after it gets wide lines. Kinyan Suda. Kinyan Suda shall kol dover, I'll kol dover, whatever it's for. Yeah, anytime you make a Kinyan, and we do it all the time. Make a Kinyan to Machai yourself on the what's it called, on the Ksuba, make a Kinyan when we sell Chometz. You know, each one has a slightly different operation. No, that's not Kinyan Suda. I don't think that's kinyan suda. That's because that's literally that's just taking ownership of the coin, so that you can end up giving the. You've done a 50p's, you can give 350p's. That's slightly different. You own it, you take ownership of it. It's like a payment, and then you overpay back. Kinyan Suda, right, is a called a Kinyan Chalipin, is where it's a Gemora Mitzia, and it's the main method we use for commitments or whatever. It's the main method, unless you do a straightforward sale, you pay money, right? The way a Kinyan, the way a Kinyan works, it's always good reviewing this. There's a machlokas in the Gemora Mitzia whether you use the Kalov Shel Koina or Kalov Shel Makna. To use the kalim is clear is the cloth or whatever you use for the kinyan. Does that belong to the koina or the matna, right? The buyer or the seller? Yeah, we paskin. It's kalov shel koina. Kalov shel koina. That means to say, let's use which one is a good example to use? Yeah, chometz is a bit confusing, but it's the most familiar one. Okay, so with chometz, when you sell your chometz, you use the kalov shel koina. Who effectively is the koina there? The rov, exactly. Although it's not not really acquiring the chometz, but he's acquiring this in the sense that he's becoming the shliach to sell the chometz, if that makes sense. So he is acquiring them in that sense, if you like.
The right to sell, you don't want to acquire.
Yeah, exactly. It's more like the right. No, it's more like the appointment to sell or whatever. Yeah. Now, how does it work? The lomdus behind it is that you make a kinyan. You are the one who want to quote unquote sell something. Okay. By making a kinyan on something that the buyer owns, because the rov is positioned here as the buyer in that sense. So you acquire that, and through the benefit that you get through acquiring something, you are Gemora makna. We assume that you intend to be makna something else in its stead. It's barter, basically. It's a system of barter. You can't. Pardon? No. Well, that's what we're going to see. Oh, that's interesting. Right. This is what we're going to see. Because here it says kinyan b'fnei shnayim. Now we don't. When do we use Aiden? Now, well, of course. So this is the point. What? We're going to sell what? That's an interesting thing. You don't need it. You technically don't need it. No. So I've tried to actually generally, or at least generally, certainly the last few years, I've tried to use Adim. It's not needed, strictly speaking. It's really not needed. It's really not needed. But it's the mechiras chometz to do mechira in front of Adim. Recently, I have done it, and I think I remember discussing it with I was discussing with Diane England. There's a milah to do it in front of Adim, the actual mechira, because gives another kind of publicity to it, or make it more of a key, but it's not necessary. You don't need Adim to do mechira. In the past, we made a big thing of it. Gaboim, the Adim, it's like if they're around, they're around. I don't remember you here. What? Yeah, it makes it more of a Gemira stars. The whole point is make it more of a thing like with anyway. We digress. But the point about kinyan is that it's you can't just transfer something that's not here, that you're not actually getting money for, remotely. There's no point you stand here and say, please sell my chometz for me. The truth is it does work that with chometz and fixed stuff, which is why it's not a great example, meaning ideally you should make a kinyan. If you don't, and you just tell or ask the rov to sell them for you, that's also okay. Yeah. But it's not great, but you can do it, right? We all did that during COVID and everything else. We did nothing with it. Not the first year, probably everyone did it then by sending something in and signing something in. But the real best way to do it is to do with the kinyan, because the way the kinyan works is you acquire that item, and through that I get the person who's buying something gets it in replacement. But if it's a normal sale, not like a mechiras chometz where it's really just the appointment of the rov to sell it on your behalf, it's not the same. Yeah, if it's a straightforward sale, so Martin wants to sell me that piece of Coke, that can of Coke, right? So he can either give me the can and I can make a kinyan on it, right? I can make a kinyan on it, or what I could do, that means if I make a kinyan on it, I own it then, right? But the alternative is that he can, let's say the can isn't here, so I can give him something of mine, like my couple, and he can make a kinyan on my couple, and then I will acquire the can, wherever the can is. That's basically how it works. Okay, and you agree to do it because you get a benefit. What's the benefit you get? The benefit you get is you get my couple temporarily for a few seconds, then you give it back to me. Then you give it back to me. And this is what we do as well with a ksuba, right? That's her same logic, right? You have to use there, and there it's interesting because there it's the edim. If you look at the lashon of the ksuba, at the end of the ksuba it says v'konino, and the edim sign, it's a declaration by the edim, v'konino, and we acquired. Romy often helps me out with this in the base thing because we do replacement ksubas. People lose their ksuba to ksuba de erchsa. People come in all sheepishly and they need a new ksuba and I need another aid. So Romy helps me out, and that's what we do. The konina, I use my couple, for example, right, and they make a kinyan on it. He makes a kinyan on it. Okay, yeah, and as a result of the making a kinyan on this item through the hana, he gets that gives the commitment to. I'm like representing the color in that exchange. The Adim are representing almost the color, if that makes sense. So they're like, he's committing or giving, which is the same thought of idea. He's committing or giving his chayvus, right, for the details that are mentioned in Ksuba through the benefit he gets of the chalip, of the bartering item. Have I confused you terribly? No, the basic logic you can understand. It's a physical act which commits you to sell something over, or to give something over, or to mechayev you in some way. No good, right? Yeah.
The usual thing for us is that the money becomes a debt.
The money does become a debt.
Yeah, the money doesn't. Well, you owe the money.
The money becomes a debt.
The money from the Kenyan activity.
No, the money doesn't get you anything.
No, that's right. No, that's the point. The Kenyan Suda, as soon as you've done the Kenyan Suda, the koiner acquires the item. Now, he's got to pay for it.
Yeah.
He still owes the money.
Correct. But the passing money does not.
No. It can do as well.
Yeah.
And it's another way of doing it. You Kenyan Kesef, or you can do Kenyan Chalipit, Kenyan Suda. But the point is that Kenyan Suda is the most straightforward way of being marketing something, and therefore we use it all the time, right? We use it all the time, Kenyan Suda, right? And therefore that's what he says. Kenyan Suda al kol dava. Suda just means like the looks like a blanket or a scarf, whatever it is. You know, that's the you use it, what? Hanky, whatever it is, right? It doesn't mean an old one. Kenyan Suda al kol dava bifnei shtaim. Yeah, bifnei shtaim in front of two edim. V'lo boitz losa, and you don't require three. You don't require three. The mishum de gabi kim shtaros on gimel, and because pardon? No. 3 would be a base din. You don't require 3 as a base din. 2 edim is enough. And mishum de gabi kim shtaros on gimel, because for kim shtaros, as we're going to see, for establishing a shtar you need 3. Hutzrach lefarish b'chol hani the dai b'shnayim. Has to say all of these. That 2 is enough. Ve'in tzarich leim ksuvu, and you don't need to say ksuvu. You don't need to write ksuvu. You don't need to tell them to write it down. Kedem afarish, tamala come on, as we're going to explain the reason later on. Right? The reason later on. So the Gemora is going to go into more detail about Kinyan, how it works. 1 second. Yeah. So, okay. So we're going to see. Basically, the Gemara is going to explain why it is that you have to, that you don't need to say ksuv, you don't need to tell them to write it down in a situation of a kinyan. And when I think the other thing we have to ask ourselves is why does the Gemara say that it's in front of 2? The Gemara is saying like this. The Gemara is saying it's enough to have just 2 edim for a kinyan. The question is, well, hold on a second, we don't always use 2 edim for a kinyan. Sometimes we do, like for ksuba we do. We don't always use 2 edim. The question is it work? Does it work? Is it essential to have 2 edim? Or maybe we don't need 2 edim. Maybe we can just do a kinyan without edim. That's a separate question. Tosfos deals with that, but I think I want to wait to see the rest of the Gemara on this before that Tosfos. So let's look at the next case for the moment. The Kiyum Shtaris, the 4th case is the Kiyum Shtaris Bishlosha. The establishing of a shtar is with 3 with 3, there's a base then, 3 dionim. So the Gemara says like this. That's the simon is just the way you remember the 4 cases, yeah? Mem is Mechom, Hodah, and Kinyan. Right. Now, let's explain Kiyum Shtar. Says the Rashbam, Kiyum Shtar is begimel. Mishesh l'shtar chavero, a person who has a star on his friend, v'choishesh shemiyelcho edim dinasayom. So I've got a star, for example, that says you owe me money, and I'm worried that the edim are going to go overseas, or they might die. When he comes to claim a debt, right? He comes to claim the debt which was in the shtar. Yiton halova, the borrower might claim ki poruahu, that it's been paid off, right? Oi mezuyafu, or he might claim that it's all a forgery, the whole thing. If the guy challenges your document and says it's a forgery or I paid it off already, then you've got to bring Adim who can testify to the accuracy of the Adim in the shtar, right? Okay. V'lo says worried you might not find any Adim. Yeah. You won't find any Adim. Okay, you won't find any Adim. Again, this is why what we learned last time is important about Hamalva es Chavero be'edim, Shelo be'edim, Ein Tzarich L'Vorah be'edim. If you lend someone money with a shtar, you'll not believe that person cannot say, I paid it off, unless he has Adim that he paid it off. That's why. You understand? So that's why if the guy comes along and says, I paid you off, if you can prove that you've got the Adim in your shtar are true Adim, that's a knockout blow to his claim, I paid you off. Because you need to pay off him off the Adim if you let with Adim, right? And therefore that's what he wants to do. But he's worried that the guy might claim that, and he has to Mekayim shtar with other Adim who recognize the signatures of the Adim. And he won't find them. So what's he going to do? What should he do? He goes to Beis Din, or maybe or Adim Ba'atzmon, and he brings the Adim themselves. That's what he does, right? He brings the Adim themselves. Okay. He goes to Beis Din, he brings the Adim themselves. Umi'idin al chasima sidei b'fnei Beis Din, and they testify about their signatures in front of Beis Din. V'heim kosnim b'sova shtar. And they write at the bottom, the Beit Dayanim write at the bottom of the shtar, Lemata mechasim asoedim, underneath the signatures of the witnesses. But most of Tlasa Kechada, we were in a sitting of 3 as 1. V'nofak shtar kadamno, they write in Aramaic, and this shtar has come in front of us. But also ploni vasidu achasimus yudayu, and so and so and so and so came and they testified about the signatures that they had. And we basically approved it and we will makayim it as we've seen, whatever, right? In other words, as is fitting. In other words, we've done this loshen, this Aramaic loshen, is what they write on the shtar, and then the chosmin bo gimal hadayonim, and the 3 dayonim sign on the shtar, and that is the way you protect your documents. If you're worried that your Adim are going to die, or they're about to go on a world cruise, and you might need to prove that the signatures were true, very simple. You make an appointment at Beis Din, and they come in, and the Beis Din say, we met these people, and the Adim, they testified this was their signatures, and then they write that down, and then they sign it, and that's what it is, right? I don't know whether this particular mechanism exists in this way nowadays. I don't think so, but maybe it does, I don't know. But what you do often see, this is very common, I see documents like this all the time in the Beis Din, is you see like a ksuba, someone submits a ksuba to get married, the parents' ksuba, right? But it's a ksuba from, whatever, 30 years ago. And in this country, it's not a problem. We have records, we have all records of the Beis Din, much, much easier. You will often see someone who's obviously a bit concerned that maybe no one will know. Let's say if you don't know the Adim. How do I know? Avram ben Yitzchak is. I don't know. I don't know who the Rav was beside the Kedushin. So sometimes what they'll do is they'll go to the Rav beside the Kedushin, okay, and he will write either on Sarah or write maybe the Ksuba or on a copy of the Ksuba. He will write, "I was beside the Kedushin for this couple on such and such a date, and I verify these are the things. This is an accurate document," which is a very similar thing. And you see the signature of the Rav who's beside the Kedushin, so he's basically certified that he did it. What? An Eid Yochid. Yeah, that's the thing. It's not the same. It's not technically an Eidus, but it is it gives a support to it. Yeah. It's not
Similar concept to Gittin, Bafana Nechton.
A little bit, I suppose. With the Shliach. Well, there's a whole kind of, what is the mechanism? How's the shliach working, etc., etc. He's got the whole thing of because it's in his hand and everything else, and how he carries it and transports it. Yeah, he's basically Yes, that's right. As he's certifying, well, I suppose either because of the Shema or in a Chaim, or whatever the reason is, you're basically, he's providing some sort of, it has got similarities, to the similar idea, And here is the Dayanim, the who henpik. This is called a henpik, the gam ashrata the daini. This is a henpik, the gam ashrata the daini. It's the certification of the Dayanim. These are the things that it's called. And now we understand why you need three. The Shnayim Shadonu Dinah Din, because even though if two people judge a case, it's called a din, based in Chotzev in Sanhedrin. They're called the based in Chotzev in Sanhedrin. That's what they're called, right? Like a Chotzbedik based in. And therefore, it's clear why you need three. V'hochan here, afilu di'evet namiloi. Even with di'evet, it doesn't work. Dim kain ma yesh bein hempik, l'shtar shelamalu mehemenu. What's the difference in the hempik and the documentation above? You're not helping anything. Here are two signing, and there are two signing. What's the difference? Okay. But what's here? Having just two witnesses, right, is useless because you've got two witnesses witnessing two witnesses.
Yeah.
Two is two. Like two isn't stronger than two. Trey Kameya. You haven't made anything that makes it stronger, right? And it's like two witnesses who are testifying that they heard from other Eidim, right? Sorry, from these other Eidim who signed that the star is kosher, which is useless. The Eidim to be Eid possible. One Eid heard from another Eid is possible. Understand? All you've got basically is two Eidim saying that these two Eidim said they signed it. Well, that's Eidim to Eid. It's not going to help you. Havuk Shein Gimel. But when there are three of them, based in, they sit as a based in Zu Eidus Gemora. That's complete Eidus. Shehi Idu al Chasimas Yodan if they based in. That they testified on their signatory in front of Beit, and their signatories in front of Beis Din. V'chshiru Beis Din es hashtar, and Beis Din v'machshir the shtar. That shtar zer kosher, this shtar is kosher, the doime l'psak din, and it is similar to an actual psak din.
So it's three Dayanim in a basin rather than three.
Yeah, three Dayanim.
Not three Adjotus. It's not.
Okay, that's a different question. Whether or not three? What does it mean here? Three. It could be. I don't think three Adjotus, but it doesn't. I don't know if it needs to be. What level of qualification they need is not entirely clear. It could be there if they're people who are kosher as Dayanim, whatever. That's presumably discussed as to what exact qualifications they need. The key criteria is you need three. You need three. Yeah, there are three people who are setting themselves up as a based in, right? Again, like I said, the mechanism of Kiyam Shtaris and what level of qualification it needs for people to be able to do that, I'm not sure. That's something which presumably is discussed in Halakha. But what is clear is that it's a fundamental difference in the way it's working. The mechanism, it's no longer Eidus, although he does say that it is Eidus Gemora that they're signing, that they sign correctly. But it's not really working, do you understand, mitam Eidus. It's working mitam psak din. It's a different pathway. And a psak din has the power to strengthen and to certify the Eidus. It brings it to another level. So this is what the final statement of Rav and Nachman was. Kiyam Shtaris, you need three people. You need three down, that's what you need. It's no good enough to have two. Right. Make sense? Okay. So here we are. Okay. So now we go back to Kinyan. Omar Rava says, if I have a problem with this whole statement, so Rava's quoted Rav Nachman who said these four things, and now he says, if I have a problem with it, this is the problem I have. Hi Kinyan, hey Chidom. What is the case of a Kinyan? What is the Kinyan? What is a Kinyan? Ika Maisa based in Domi. If it's similar to a Maisa based in, if that's what we're comparing the mechanism of a Kinyan to, it's losa. Should need three people. It shouldn't need three people. You have to do it in front of three people. If you're not going to say it's like a Maisa based in, why should you not need to say ksuvu? Right? You should need to, because it's detrimental to him. it's detrimental to him to write it down without his permission. Without his permission. Why? Why? Because it's detrimental to the seller. To the seller, you're improving the position of the buyer. You're improving the position of the buyer by writing it down in a shtar. Yeah. Clearly, the buyer is going to be in a better position if he's got it written down, right? He's got it written down. Okay. So again, what's going on here with Kinyan? What is going on with the Kinyan? I want to sell something, so I sell it in front of two people. Okay, bifnei shnayim, and the Gemora says that they don't need to write ksuvu. So Rava's problem is like this: if you say that it's a ma'aser based in, so then I can understand why you don't need to give a separate instruction to write anything down, because based in have the power to write anything down like this. We say hefka based in hefka, right? They can write down whatever's done in front of them. The whole idea of like having to ask permission because it might be to his detriment to have it written down, it's not relevant if it's sucked in. If it's a ma'aser based, that's all irrelevant. Based in can write down whatever they want. That's established. They do. That's what a ma'aser based in is. They write it down. This is the situation that happens. We don't really care if someone is going to lose out as a result of it. I mean, that's unfortunately the nature of most things that take place within based in. Someone's going to lose out. I mean, not always, but this type of someone's going to. That's fine. But if you say that it's nothing to do with the ma'aser based in, and that's why you only need two, which means it's just two Eidim, you're making the Kinyan in front of two Eidim. So why should you not need to say what surely you should, the Eidim should not be able to write it down unless you told them to. Because if they write it down, what's the effect of them writing down that this Kinyan transpired? The buyer is in a much stronger position and the seller is in a worse position because you've strengthened the hand of the buyer.
You proved his ownership. Why is it? The seller wants to sell it.
The seller wants to sell it, but he might not want to sell it. He might not want this Kinyan to be written down in a document.
Why not?
Why not?
Only if he wants to negate the sale.
What's he got to hide?
Nah. What's he got to hide?
Takes time and money.
No, it's a good question. It's a good question. Rashbam just says he doesn't want to necessarily be miyapeh, that means improve the schus of the koiner, of the buyer. He doesn't necessarily want to put him in a better position.
If it's a Kinyan and there's a transfer of the property or the transfer of ownership, then no one would dispute the buyer's right to own the object.
If the Kinyan has taken place. That's true.
What way does having a document improve it? Unless you could say, well, it's dated, and therefore, if there's implicitly some type of guarantee that if it goes wrong in the next year or so, the buyer has a right to take it back to get.
Yeah, I mean, it's
you've just got a kid there, you haven't got a date, you haven't got non-establishing.
You know, in my mind, I'm like quitting it to buy something without a receipt.
Yeah, it does seem to be a bit like that.
I've got either. I could bring the agent and come along and go, you know, on Tuesday, on such and such day, I've got this thing, something in my 12-month work. So why not?
Unless the agent are going to be away, they're not around, you can't find them. Whereas if you've got the document, you're there.
Yeah, it might be.
But it feels like it's a bit small print stuff.
Yeah.
It might be. It might be that you can actually, if it's written down, it might be that you've got greater capacity to claim, like from people who are, buyers or subsequent buyers or whatever. I don't know if that works though, because that should be yours anyway, because you bought it. Kinyan means you bought it. You bought it anyway. No, it's not the same. No, you own it. You fully own it. You fully own it. Okay, well let's keep it in mind. Let's see the Rashbam and see if it becomes clearer. Either way, the point is still clear, right? That somehow it's to the detriment of the seller to have it written down, right? So why on earth should you not need to get permission to write it down? These two people. And Rava solved this by saying like this. After he asked the question, he solved it La'olam in reality, love Maisa based in Domi. It's not like a Maisa based in. And that's why there's two Eidim. Because not a Maisa based in. And here, what's the reason you don't need to say Ksuvu, write it down? You know why you don't need to write it? You don't need to instruct? Because it's assumed that a kinyan is always supposed to be written down. It's destined to be written down. It's part of the deal. If this answer is a bit like what you're trying to say, Jeremy. You understand? It's part of the deal. If I do a kinyan suda, right? Or if you, sorry, as the buyer, perform a kinyan suda in front of Eidim, the assumed position is that it's ready. It's ready to be written down. It's recorded. That's why. Why shouldn't it be? Even though you get in a better position as a result. Yeah.
It's a package deal.
Yeah. By the way, there's a simple reason also why a shtar is to the betterment of the buyer and to the detriment of the seller, because it's not without that it's deniable, isn't it? So because what if they leave? They go away. You can't get hold of them.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what we're saying. It's that there's a marginal benefit because.
It's not so marginal.
Well, but no one's really going to be. Why would you be disputing the ownership?
Well, if I want to, why would you be disputing the ownership? Why would you be disputing the ownership? You would be, yeah, okay, you're right. Why would you be? I don't know why you might.
Found out the price.
Yeah. Yeah, there could be all sorts of reasons why you might do that. It won't be correct. It won't be correct. It won't be correct.
Then the buyers.
But anyway, it says here, well, actually, they're going to write it down anyway. So
Now they're going to write it down.
Yes, you don't need to say.
That's right. The reason why you don't need to instruct the Eidim to write it down is because that's an automatically assumed, even though it's to the detriment of the buyer, of the seller. Sorry, even though it's assumed they're going to write it down. Let's see the Rashbam. Omar Rav says, "Ikashili." If I have a problem with this, b'chol hanach dinim, with all these dinim, the Omani Rav Nachman said to me, "Gabi kinyan lechudu the kashli." The only problem I have is with kinyan. Hi kinyan l'mayim Omani Rav Nachman. This kinyan, what is Rav Nachman comparing it to? Ika ma'isa based in domi. If it's like a ma'isa based in, umishum de dome ladin shel dayonim, because it's similar to the din of dayonim shemitziim mizeh v'nosnim lozeh. The dayonim take away from one person, they give it to another. That's what's involved in a din Torah. Vav eidei kinyan. Alidei dusan. Similarly, the eidim for a kinyan, alidei dusan, through their testimony, sheroyen bekinyan, that they see the kinyan, yotzi moment zeh b'shas a kinyan, the money transfers hands at the time of the kinyan or the property. Miyad hamakne liyad hakoina. That's what happens at that moment when you make a kinyan on the suda. That is the moment that the property, the item, transfers to the other person's possession. Do you see the comparison?
yeah,
It's like judging a case, like a din Torah.
except that not all cases are transfer.
No, but those which are a din of dayonim, classic din, a din Torah. The psak of the dayonim means that they end up transferring money from Reuven to Shimon. That's what their action does. And a kinyan is the same thing. Okay, Eidei kinyan, right, is the same thing. So if it's like a Maisa based in and it works through the same operation, umeshum de domi the Maisa based in, and because it's comparable to a Maisa based in, Gemora of Nachman says, "Ein tzarich lo maksuvu." You don't need someone to write it down. So we see, avagav the chayvu lemakna, even though it's something which is negative for the seller, lichtov shtar, to write a document. Here he says, you see, oleyapos zuchuso shel koina, and thereby improve the rights, the position of the buyer. That's what the document does. If you look even to a coast from Eidim write it down without his permission. No need to ask permission. Kedin call Maisa based in, like any Maisa based in, Shekach based in Yofer, based in a very strong power of Hefker and Hefker. They can make anything Hefker. Lichtov kol anasa b'fneihen, to write down anything that was done in front of them. If so, boy gimel kikiyim shtaris. But if that's the case, you should need three because they're a based in, like establishing documents. You need three. So Rav Nachman's catch-22 type question is, if you're going to tell me that the whole reason you don't need to request, should we write this down or not? You don't need permission to write it down, is because they've got this koyach of a beis din, so that even though it's to the detriment of the seller to write it down, who cares? Beis din have the right to write down anything that transpires in front of them, and that it comes a ma'aser beis din, and it has effect. Hefka beis din hefka. It's one of the things that beis din have the right to do. And if so, liboy gimel kiyum shtaris. If so, it should need three. You should need three of them, like kiyum shtaris. Yeah. The concept of what beis din write down is very, very powerful. A ma'aser beis din has got a strength. The word phrase ma'aser beis din is used all the time in Botei Din around the world today, right? In the context of a get. That's what it says at the top of a get certificate, which is the piece of paper that allows someone to remarry. No one ever brings the get. The get is always kept inside the beis din. That's not just in London, that's all over the world, right? They don't give getting out, they keep them in the beis din. But they give a certificate that says on it, I mean, different places, different things, but they have a ma'aser beis din. So for example, you see a get that comes from, which I often do regularly in the beis din, you see a get that comes from Eretz Yisrael, the Rabbanut, there's two pieces of paper normally. There's a piece of paper which details, I think, what happened, this person in the get, whatever, but it says this piece of paper is not to be used as evidence without the ma'aser beis din. And then there's another piece of paper which is ma'aser beis din, and it details the action of the beis din, and that has the weight of yeah, that is the document. That is the document, right? What's also interesting about this idea of beis din, this phrase that koyach beis din yofer v'hefkeron hefka, it means that they have the ability to make something hefka. They can transfer property one to another. Lichtov kol hanas b'fneihem, to write down anything done in front of them. So this takes place to this day. For example, in the London beis din, it's a very important role. It takes a lot of time. Someone is designated, someone is dedicated to doing it. There's a retired US rabbi who does it at the moment, but others have done it in the past. Dan Gayton, when he first joined the beis din, he did it. Is to write down the minutes. There's a minute book, a proceedings book of the London beis din. I mean, there are many, many proceeding books going back many, many, many years. The proceedings book of the London beis din, and he was telling me when I first came, he told me that this has got the koyach of, it's very important, the minute book, because you can use it as proof of something and as an evidence. It's admissible in court almost, and that's what I think this Rashba means. The proceedings, what's written down, what took place in front of them. Everything that transpires in beis din is written in that book. Everything has to be kept update every day, whatever transpires. So and so received a get, so and so, I don't know, so and so, such and such Gerim came forward for an interview, whatever it is, everything is everything, all the activities of the beis din are written down. There is apparently, I haven't seen it, but the archivist at the London beis din said that, did he mention this last time? I didn't know this. There's one, when we went with the Bar Mitzvah boys last week, that there's one proceedings book which is full of shrapnel.
Yeah.
There's a book full of shrapnel because it was the bomb during the war, and the proceedings book took a hit. He also said there was a proceedings book that disappeared. No?
Yes, he was mentioned, yeah.
There was a bomb went off or something, and they came back to the courtroom, and the book had disappeared. And they think what might have happened was some disgruntled person who didn't like what had been written walked off in the confusion, walked off with the proceedings book, so he couldn't.
Is it being digitalized?
I don't know if the proceedings book has a whole been digitalized, but it's an amazing record. Yeah, he doesn't. Yeah, that's he works with the typewriter. No. But I'm not sure whether the proceedings books have been scanned. They probably should be. I know that the most interesting part of to date of the proceedings that are on the beis din have basically been the Ksav Yad of Dayan Abramsky. So you go back to when Dayan Abramsky was the Rosh beis din. So he wrote in his own hand in the proceedings book, which you can see, various psukim, and that has been, I think, incorporated into Sforim. For example, you have after the war, you have his piskei halacha, his psak din on various agunas, because the British were very involved in Belsen, after the war, and there was a very lot of controversy over it because people wanted to get remarried, but it wasn't straightforward. They had to cut psak from the beis din to allow them to remarry. There's a whole story about it. You know that, right? Anyway, so in the proceedings after the war, they had cases of agunas who would come and describe the situation, and he would work out whether they could be mutter them to remarry or not.
So these are married women who survived the camps.
And they had no idea where the husbands were. There's no proof of the husbands.
So how would you solve that?
Well, there were various halachas around the goodness of what's evidence and how you know, and whether you have evidence of the person It could be someone. It could be someone who provides clear evidence they got on a train that went to Treblinka, and we know that there were, 9 people out of 400,000 who survived, or something like that. You know what I mean? It was very difficult, very, very hard. It was a very powerful story told last Yom HaZikaron. I think I might have mentioned this at one point. That by I think it was Rav David Yosef, Ravaj's son, last Yom HaZikaron in Israel, he was describing how after the Yom Kippur War, they would come into his father every day. The generals, they would all come in and they would sit there and they would go through, spend the whole day going through all of the cases of the Agunas after the war. Because unfortunately, a lot of the soldiers who were killed in the Yom Kippur War didn't come back. They were killed. They were disappeared. They were missing in action.
They weren't found.
They weren't found. They weren't found in Syria. They were missing in action. They were never found. Some were. There's a lot of, unfortunately, quite a lot weren't. There were 3,000 soldiers killed in the Yom Kippur War, more. 2,000, but it was a significant number. And they went there, and he said he remembered his father. He used to come in every day, and he spent all day going through and working evidence. And at night, that night when everyone left, his father would write down his psak as to whether or not the women could remarry, and he would write it down and he would weep. And he would say he remembers his father weeping over the soldiers, how he used to cry, and it was as he was doing the psak. Yeah, I think they managed to be mutter all of them by the end, but it's an incredible responsibility because. The weight of what the consequences are.
Were there any cases where they said Cannon and husband turned up?
Yeah, there were cases of that. Not in Yom Kippur. I don't think any of those. Was there were? Yeah. Yeah, and it's a terrible tragedy. There was a case of a Basra Rabbi. Told you. Yeah. I never told you that case. We digress by some. Rabbi Ephraim Oshri in his sefer on Shalas Chus Mamakim, which is Ephraim Oshri was in the Kovno ghetto, and he was a Rav in the Kovno ghetto, and he was asked many shilas during the war, and after the war he wrote them down in a sefer called. I mean, he wrote papers during the war. I think it was later collected into. I think it was a 3-volume work called Shilas Achos Mima'amakim from the depths. It was translated into English, but it's very abbreviated. Have you seen the English version? What's it? I think I've got it. No? I've got a copy of it. I think it's whatever. It's not called. I can't remember what it's called in English. Anyway, they made it into English. The English is not really the thing. The English doesn't have all the lomdus and the psak. No, the English has the psakim, just the psak. It doesn't have the background. Yeah. Anyway, so there was a case of a mamzer where there was a rov of a town who they discovered he was a mamzer because of this, because his mother had remarried after the war and her husband showed up, and the shaila was brought to him, was he allowed to stay in his position as a rov? Terrible. Because mamzer is a fact. It's not. It's a reality. And I think he passed that he shouldn't because of the covenant with Tzibah. Yeah. So that's the shaila. That's the shiva of Ephraim. So it did happen, huge tragedy. But that's why it's such a huge responsibility.
Was it very
That's a good question. That would be even more of a tragedy. Yeah, there you are. So that's how it is. Yeah, that's how it is. But we encounter these cases. We encounter this immense tragedy when these cases happen. Okay, so right now, the point is that where you see that there is, if you're going to say the Mimon of Shach is like this, catch 22. If you're going to say that the reason why, the way it works, the mechanism of Eidim of a Kinyan are really like Dayanim, because their presence transfers the item. You do an act of a Kinyan in front of these Eidim, and they're really functioning like a Beis Din, because their presence changes that moment, that second, changes ownership, just like a Beis Din, making things happen. That's the idea, right? If that's the case, you should need 3 people. And the reason why you want to explain it's like a Beis Din, because it helps us understand why you don't need to take suvu. There's no instruction on writing things. Anything a Beis Din does, automatically written down. We're not bothered who loses out, who doesn't. That's the kerch of a Beis Din. And if you're going to say, says the Rashbam, we love Kamaisa Beis Din, Domi, if you're going to say they're not like a Maisa Beis Din, or Mishum Hochi Ka'omar, the Sagi Bebeis, and for that reason you're going to say it's enough with 2 Eidim, because they're not like a Maisa Beis Din. Amayenu Tzorech Lo Maksuvu. Why don't you need to say ksuvu? It's obviously a debt to him. It's obviously not good for him to write it down without his permission. because it's the detriment. The makna is losing out if the koiner is able to wave the piece of paper saying, "You sold me this. You made a kinyan." Clearly, he's losing out. Whether it's to do with just the simple deniability, he's not. It's there. It's proven. You've definitely sold it. Yeah. Difficulty with it only being to do with him being able to deny it is, generally speaking, we're not too interested in takonos for those who are thieves or gunners or liars or cheats. So it's a bit difficult to understand why that should, why that should be. Okay, well, let's continue for a moment. The Gemora answers, "Lo'olam lav k'ma'aser beistin." In reality, it's not like a ma'aser beistin. It's just testimony, and that's why it's enough for 2 Eidim, right? That's why it's enough for 2 Eidim. It's just testimony, just edus, and therefore that's why it's enough with 2. You don't need 3. If that's the case, how can it be that you don't need to tell them, write it down? The answer is because the stam kinyan ksiva omeid. It's assumed that a kinyan is meant to be written down. Says the Rashbam, Mishum de'ein la'achar kinyan klum. There is nothing after kinyan. Because since he's makne to him with a suda, with a cloth, right? As we said, in front of Eidim, and he hurries to be makne to him immediately, because that's the mechanism of a kinyan suda. You, the seller, are demonstrating that you want this out of your hands. That's what you do with a kinyan, don't you? Why do you use the kinyan route? Why not wait till he pays the money? Seems more safer thing to do, right? Why do you want to transfer the ownership like that immediately? The answer is because it's clear you want to get rid of it straight away. And he doesn't push him off until he goes. He doesn't, delay him until he goes and is moshech the metaltalin, does mashicha kinyan on the movable items, or to give him time to go and make a chazaka in the karkois. What type of chazaka do we mean?
Using each of the fruit.
No.
Going on to the
What we mean is this is the other type of chazaka. Yeah, we mean like digging something in the land to show ownership. It's demonstration of ownership. Demonstration of ownership. Yeah, it's a different type of chazaka. A different type of chazaka. So in other words, why didn't you do that? Why doesn't, if I want to sell you either land or something that's metaltalin, I could just wait. I'll say to you, that's fine, I'm happy to sell it to you. When you give me the money, it's yours for the metaltalin or with the karka. When you've gone and made a chazaka and you've dug a trench in it, or what it calls rofak beipurta, you've dug a little bit into the ground. The halachas of chazaka, that's our chazaka at the end of this parak, the latest second part of it. Now, the fact that he doesn't do all of that, it's clear that he wants him to acquire it, or to makne it to him, but ayin yofer, with a good eye.
It just occurred to me now why he benefits the buyer.
Why?
Because you answer the question, because the exchange of money doesn't happen there and then. So if you just got a kinyan without any document, but no exchange of money, then did I pay it all to you at the time? How much did it? Whereas if you've got it in writing, this item was transferred from Reuben to Shimon.
And what?
For this price.
Yeah.
And in the presence of these 2 Eidim, it is absolutely it's inconceivable that the buyer could then say, "I haven't paid you."
Although he may well not have paid.
No, I'm saying, but I
mean, you can't deny the price.
can't deny the price.
Yeah, he hasn't paid yet, but it's been fixed. Yeah. That's fair enough. Yeah, it could be.
Consideration.
Yeah, you mean you're saying that the documentation confirms that the circumstances of the acquisition.
Yes, and effectively means, actually, I mean, in a way, it gives the seller, you could argue, gives the seller an advantage, because the seller has now got clearly a debt.
A right to the money. Yeah.
Which with the simple kinyan won't have.
Yeah, could be. That's part of it. But either way, what we're saying here is it's clear that miskavinu lagnosa b'ayin yofer. he intends to be makne with a positive attitude to give it to him in a generous spirit. Or mistoma, and it's assumed that that they want to write it down. As it says in Ksubas in Perak Afalpi. The Gemara there says, if he says to witnesses, write it down and sign it, and give it to him. Once they've made a kinyan from him, right? The Eidim have accepted. This is mamash what we do before. It's really the same phraseology that we use at chuppah, yeah? Or you understand? He says to the Eidim, ksubu v'chasumu, sign it, write it, and sign it and give it to him. Konu minei, once they've made a kinyan, who? The Eidim, they made a kinyan from the person giving the instructions. They don't need to ask him or to check when they come to write it down in a document. Shema chozar. Maybe he's changed his mind. Maybe he changed his mind. They made a kinyan. So Makabel kinyan. Who is Makabel kinyan? They konu minei. Who was Makabel? Who made the kinyan? Well, but the Eidim, presumably here. No. What? Konu minei. They accept the kinyan? No, because 1 second. No, 1 second. No, no. It's an instruction. It's an instruction. They are the same things like selling the chomets. Same thing. You ask me to sell your chomets. You're telling me to do something. Yeah, that's what you're telling me to do. So therefore here it's the Eidim. Yeah, they know they presumably they are the ones here who have to make the kinyan. I think.
On what?
Oh, on a kinyan suda, on an item that belongs to him.
What? The kinyan is a
Oh, just 1 second. No, it's the other way. No, you're right. It's the other way around. The other way around. He is telling them to write something down. He's giving them an instruction. Kalov shel koina. He makes a kinyan on their he makes a kinyan on their items. That's what it means. Konu minei. They accept kinyan from him. They aid him. They give him an item that's theirs. He makes a kinyan because it's Kalov shel koina. He makes a kinyan on the Suda, right? On the Suda. And then they are committed to the instruction that he has given them, if you like, if that makes sense. He is committed to that. He has given over what he said he wants to give over to them. And therefore then he doesn't they don't need to answer him. To ask him, whether or not he wants to do it. Because when they want to write the shtar, maybe he's changed his mind. Because it's assumed that a kinyan is meant to be written down. If they didn't accept the kinyan from him, there is an opinion there. They have to ask him. Maybe he's changed his mind, doesn't want to write it down. Even though he commanded them explicitly to write it down. Let's have a look at the Gemora. Make sure you've got it clear. I think that's what it must mean. Because again, who is the buyer here? Who is the buyer? He's instructing the Eidim. That's what he's doing. He's instructing the Eidim. Yeah, it's the same phrase in the Gemora Gittin at the beginning, at the end of the first paragraph. Just has it. So should we acquire from 1 second. They acquire from him. One second. Should we acquire from you? I think. I mean, I'm just. I think that's what it must mean. So acquire from him. Okay, let's see. He said, in case he says to Adam, write it down, sign it, and give it to him. Then, if they acquire it from him, they've made a kinyan. They don't need to ask anymore. They don't need to ask anymore whether to write it down. Who is the person here who's giving something over? The person giving the instruction, right? No?
So you got A. A's appointing to
Adam
Adam
to sell something on his behalf.
to sell something on his behalf
Yeah.
to Mr. B. And,
Yeah.
and they decide to buy it from themselves instead of.
They're not buying it. No. Konomine means the kinyan. That's what it means.
It's King.
Yeah, it definitely means the kinyan. That's what it means. Konomine is the moment of kinyan. That's what it means. Konumine. That's what it means, right? So any question I'm just wondering is which way round it is. Which way round it is. Here, he's appointing them. He is appointing them. He is telling them to sell it. Okay. No. Yeah. No, that doesn't matter. Yeah, that's right. They are. The Eidim are acting in that capacity. Again, let's think of the ksuba again. What do we write in the ksuba? V'konino. What does it mean v'konino? Who made a kinyan? He lifts up. He, the chosen, makes a kinyan. Yes, and through that, v'konino minei.
We acquire from him.
Yeah, you understand? Like,
Who acquires the agent?
yeah, he makes the kinyan then, because he is the one who, through the act of making the kinyan, it's a kinyan they receive. That's konumine means. Yeah, exactly. It's the same thing. The person who's giving over the appointment, the thing, whatever. What makes him give it over? The answer is because he makes the kinyan in the on the suda. That's the same thing that's happening here.
This is not a kinyan of acquisition.
No, it's a kinyan of appointment. That's why it's more comparable to what's going on at a chuppah and what's going on in a way with the chometz as well. What goes on with a chuppah? The Eidim are, their role is almost like to represent the color. That's what they're doing. That is what they're doing. They're representing the color. The color is the one who benefits from the ksuba, right? She gets X amount in the ksuba. How does she get that in the ksuba? What does she get? She gets nothing. She gets a commitment. She gets a commitment, a rock solid cast iron commitment that whatever they would agree to give this money, right? How does that work? The answer is the Eidim declare the konino minei, right? We use the mechanism of kinyan suda. We acquired from him. Really, he is the one who makes the kinyan, but that's what transfers the thing over to them, and that I think is what the same thing is happening here. Konumine, they don't need to ask anything when they want to write in the shtar, right? Because he's not going to be chayz. It's assumed that kinyan is for writing. That's what you do. Stam kinyan, liksiva oimed. That is what you do with the kinyan. But if they didn't, then they have to start asking, because maybe he's changed his mind. Even though he told him to do something, could he change his mind? So therefore, what Rosh Hashanah is doing is proving the Gemara subas that it's assumed that a kinyan is succeeded. Really, these people are not dayanim, they're just Eidim. If they're just Eidim, how can you write it down? The answer is because it's assumed that a kinyan, once you make a kinyan, it's assumed that you want it to be written down. That's part and parcel. You're giving it over by an yofa, it's assumed that you want to give it over. Well, I have time, when we run out of time next time, Michelle wants to take this. Yeah.
Marriage is when he marries a girl.
Forget about Kiddushim. About commitment to the ksuba. That's all we're talking about. Before. Yeah. No, nothing to do with the chuppah. Maybe I confused you. I meant before at the Kabbalah. The Kabbalah, no, the Kabbalah confusion. Sorry, I meant to explain it clearly. I'm talking about the Kabbalah spawning. When you've seen the chosa make a kinyan, what is going on? The answer is that the Eidim are representing the color, and they are trying, and that second, they're extracting a cast iron commitment. That's why they only sign afterwards, because it says v'konina, we made a kinyan. Some have the meaning that they write that They do that under the chuppah. They fill it in there and then only then they sign under the chuppah once they fill in the note, whatever. Yeah, and that's the moment. How does that work? The answer is that's a kinyan chalipin. That's what's going on, right? That is what's going on. Yeah, sorry. Okay, anyway. Okay.
Exchanging text of each other.
Have a good evening. Bye, Richard.